Well, thank you. Thank you for covering me. That means a lot. Over these past, 7 months, I've been covered with, the media and the print media and the radio media. And I just want to thank CBS 19 for covering me. Just a few highlights of my life. I was born in San Diego, California, on October 22nd of 1955. I was in foster care for 18 years. I aged out of the foster care system, 14 foster homes, 2 reformatory schools where they beat you in the morning and at night, and emotionally and mentally and physically raped. The Hillcrest Receiving Home was only supposed to have 33 kids, ended up having over 200, and many of those young people were put in cardboard boxes and died. I was fortunate by a Catholic nun who petitioned the judge for me and my brother and sisters to be released. The night before I was released, my sister and my brother were hung on the ceiling, and that was very difficult. But after 14 foster homes, my 14th foster home, the late Dady Florence Johnson Brown took a hopeless and a voiceless, battered and shattered and tattered little boy. So I can't imagine what you've been through. I can't come across my mind what you've been through. But she took me by the shoulders, looked me in the eye, and said, "Don't let your abuse be your excuse." And I worked real hard in athletics and academics. I was able to secure a scholarship at the University of California at Los Angeles. I played football, ran track. I was blessed to be a part of the Olympic trials in 1976. But my passion, even though I was in the orphanage and then going from foster home to foster home, was I wanted to be a coach and I wanted to be a pastor. Well, long story short, God blessed me for 50 years in the ministry, 40 years as a pastor. Then I became a pastor here in Tyler at the Greater New Pleasant Hill Missionary Baptist Church, where I served for 32 years. Wonderful people, a wonderful group, wonderful community. Some of the information that came out that said, because of misappropriation of this, that, and the other, that I was fired. I was not fired. I retired. I built a children's home. I built a youth center. I built an annex that was named after me. I built a park in the community. One of our senior members, I named a street after her. I built a whole new vestibule and remodeled the church that was in difficult conditions when I went there and built the membership. But it is a great church with great people and a great community. I retired and working with the Southern Baptist Convention, I was asked, to start a mission church, the Open Door Bible Church. 4 years ago, I started that, and I'm just loving it. Also, I also wanted to coach and had a very successful coaching career there in California. But then I became the track coach 30-some years ago, and I served for 30 years at the Bishop Gorman Catholic High School here in Tyler. I always say, well, there's plenty good in the Piney Woods. And 10 championships. I sent 205 of those young people, little old small Catholic high school, and people thought, well, no, you don't go to the big colleges, Texas and A&M and Penn State, to Dartmouth and what have you. But I was able to get our kids there. Let me tell you why. Academic athletes. I always tell people that my kids could spell cat, that, and bat. And so, and they're very successful over these 30 years, had a very successful career at Bishop Gorman Catholic High School. Also here in Tyler, when I came, there was a tremendous color line here. And so I'm about the solution revolution and not the criticizing and ostracizing and then have no ideas and no solutions. I started the Martin Luther King March 30-some years ago. Nobody thought it would work. Nobody thought it was the time. Everybody thought it was wrong. Is that you're from the West Coast. We don't do this in the East. People talk good games, but then when push comes to shove and shove comes to push, when it was time to bring blacks and whites together, nobody wanted to do it. The Lord blessed me to do it. I'll never forget that first march there down the street from my church. In 2 years, it became too big for our church, too big for the community. And then we took the big step to bring it downtown Tyler. They said, Reverend Milton, you lost your mind. This is absolutely, unequivocally, irrefutably not going to work. It's been working for 30-some years. And bringing blacks together, and whites together, and browns together, and reds together. And this is what I've done. Most people forget that on that Saturday leading up to the Martin Luther King March, I had the Children's and Youth March going down 155 to the St. Louis church, teaching young people about diversity and coming together. Black young people marched, white young people marched. And so what I tried to do was to be proactive and not reactive. Proactive for a new generation, so when they become mothers and they become fathers and they become pastors and leaders and teachers, that at least in Tyler and Smith County, I can make the light shine in my own community. And as it relates to the situation that I'm dealing with now, is that Mr. and Mrs. Brown were members of pastor for over 30 years. Great people, wonderful people. This all started in October of 2020. Mr. Brown was in the hospital. It was the height of the pandemic situation, and he didn't want to go to the nursing center. He had some health challenges that looked like was threatening his life. He wanted to go home. I assisted, I interceded, and helped him go home where he could have dignity of life. Then in February of 2021, Mr. Brown fell at home and broke his hip. The paramedics came. He was taken to the hospital. He called me again to intercede because they wanted to give him a very dangerous surgery because of asbestos of his lungs and other health challenges. He was not going to survive that surgery. And they mentioned that to Mrs. Brown. They said it's a 50-50 chance. She didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. I was in position to help, and also as his pastor, I interceded. And Mr. Brown was able to come home where he could live out the balance of his days with respectability and honor and dignity as we would want for any of our parents or friends. There was some concern with some of the family members that she should be maybe in memory care or Mr. Brown should be in a nursing home. And then Adult Protective Services of the state of Texas, Adult Protective Services came, Mrs. Megan Crowell, and they kept the Browns situation and our care of the Browns under watchful supervision for 7 months. 7 months. I want to make this point here that after 7 months, you have to understand, they would come in the morning, but they wouldn't tell you. They would come in the evening or at night. Many times we were not there. I would hear about it the next day when I would go see Mr. Brown every morning. And he would tell me that, well, the state's been by. Mrs. Crowell's been by. And I said, okay. Because when you don't have nothing to hide. For 7 months, they were talking to Mr. and Mrs. Brown one-on-one with nobody there. Looking at their finances, looking to make sure food was there, looking at making sure they were clean and taken care of for 7 months. After 7 months, the Texas Department of Adult Protective Services closed the case. They said we were doing a good job. I asked two members of the church to assist me and aid me in taking care of the Browns. But I want to also be clear here. It is not something I asked for. It was not something that I sought. We thought when Mr. and Mrs. Brown came out of the hospital that the home health, as we understood it, was going to take over immediately, and that was the end of that. I talked with several of his relatives that we had done all we could as a church. I had done all I could as a pastor, and then let's pass the baton to them. Well, they figured another week or two, home health was going to take over, and if we could just go ahead and just make them comfortable and take care, and we did. Well, 2 or 3 weeks turned in almost 9 months. It is not something that the two members of the church had to do, but the Browns were so good to them, and having the skills in that area to help, they wanted to give back. Mm-hmm. And so, so we took care of them. But I tried to get Mr. Brown. I talked with him. You know, you have a son. They're in Dallas. This is their responsibility, his responsibility, to come down and take care of you. I was there every morning. The caretakers were there 2 or 3 times. And then, of course, home health finally came in, then hospice came in. So there was a lot of eyes looking at Mr. and Mrs. Brown, talking to Mr. and Mrs. Brown on an individual basis with nobody around. And so I remember on one occasion that Mr. Brown, the son, came to see his father, and his car broke down in Lindale. And so Mr. Brown, just feeling sorry for his son, wanted to send his son $2,000. Well, $2,000 wasn't there, but I put it together and sent the son. I talked with the son about it, and he was very cordial and what have you, and I sent him the $2,000. But I'm always being called a thief. I'm always being called, I'm taking the money, and I want to get to that in just one second. I took care of Mr. and Mrs. Brown. It's not something I asked for, not something I sought. They brought an attorney in to give me durable power of attorney. I had durable power of attorney for Mr. Brown, durable power of attorney for Mrs. Brown. I was in charge of all of their medical. I was in charge of all of their financial, and I paid the bills. I took care of Mr. and Mrs. Brown. They wanted the house painted. I got the house painted. They wanted the fence built. I built the fence. They wanted one of the back houses remodeled, and I got it remodeled. Everybody in the neighborhood saw the Hispanic contractors doing it, every day. Most of those kind of things were paid for in cash because that's what the contractors asked for, and I did that and got the receipts for it. But what I'm trying to just with those highlights is not what I asked for, but he asked me to be his power of attorney. He asked me to be the executor of his estate. He knew that he was passing away, but he wanted his wife taken care of. He wanted his granddaughter, which he felt so much about, which was Mr. Brown's, his son's daughter. He wanted the caretaker taken care of. Then he went with the AAG mortgage, that's the reverse mortgage program. And so when he passed away, then everything would go to her. We had a death deed and had that on file. And so that the caretaker would be taken care of, Ms. Brown would be taken care of, his granddaughter would be taken care of. And I did that. But AAG called, for our viewers, I want them to understand. AAG didn't, I set everything up, but they called Mr. and Mrs. Brown and said, is this what you want? They said yes. Do you want Reverend Milton to be your agent and negotiate these things for you? They said yes. The good thing about that conversation is recorded. AAG has it recorded. So I didn't steal the house. Then they had a car, and they gave the car to the caretaker. The caretaker has been in possession of that car for months and months. And so when I was accused of taking the car, and when I'll get into Detective Lydia Thetford in just one moment, they went to one of my members' house, and they asked her, is this the car? And she said, yes. Here's the VIN number. They also, one time, we'll get into that, they're at the McDonald's. So what I'm trying to get you to understand, and our viewers to understand, I cannot steal what I never possessed. I didn't steal the house. I don't have the deed. My name wasn't on there. All I was the agent to negotiate that Mr. Brown could take care of his wife. Mr. Brown could take care of his granddaughter. Mr. Brown could take care of the caretaker. Mr. Brown could get some things done around the house that he wanted to. I may not have done everything perfect. It's my first time being power of attorney, but God in heaven knows I tried to do what he wanted me to do to the best of my sovereign ability to do it. I came over one morning to visit Mr. Brown, and then there was the detective there at the house. Mr. Brown's son was there. The detective was there, where he had filed complaints against me for misusing and misappropriating his father and mother's money and not taking care of them. But I was there and the caretakers were there for 7, 8 months. The question of the hour, where was Mr. Brown Jr.? Where was he all those months? I never should have been power of attorney. Nobody else ever should have been taking care of his mother and his father. I saved his father's life. I saved his mother's life. I gave his parents dignity of life, respectable life, an honorable life. He should have been coming down to see them and not coming down to make accusations and complaints against somebody that was taking care of his mother and his father when it should have been him. I tried to get Mr. Brown to reconcile with his son, and when you look at his will, there's things that I put in there and provisions that I put in there that would take care of his son. Mr. Brown didn't want it, but I knew it was right, and I got him to go along with that. But then the detective, Lydia Thetford, talked with me outside of the home. And we talked 45 minutes, and she showed me something, this check and that check. And Mr. Brown told the detective, some things I'm not familiar with, he said, but I trust Reverend Milton. I have put my life and my affairs in his hand. He's innocent of what my son is saying. He's innocent of what you're showing me. Please don't come back to my house anymore with your badges and guns and scaring me and my wife, and the neighborhood is looking. But Mrs. Thetford, after Mr. Brown said Reverend Milton is innocent, please don't come back anymore, she comes back unannounced the second time with a police sergeant and try to get them to sign charges against me for the second time, harassing these senior citizens, harassing these elderly persons. Then a few weeks later, she comes back the third time to do the absolute same thing. The caretakers were there, and they heard that, and certain threats were made to them. But I want all the viewers to understand, on 3 occasions, Mr. and Mrs. Brown said very clearly, there was a good and sound mind. We love our pastor. He loves us. He's not taking money from us. He's giving money. And he hasn't done anything wrong. We asked him to do it. I gave him the authority. They said unequivocally to her 3 times, to Detective Lydia Thetford 3 times, my pastor is innocent. My pastor is not guilty. We gave our pastor the authority to do what he's doing. They asked their son to leave and never come back, making these accusations against Reverend Milton when he should have stepped on to this accountability and responsibility. After I'm in jail, then you go to court and want to be a guardian a year later. But a year earlier, this is what you and the family should have been doing. Reverend Milton shouldn't have been doing it. The caretaker shouldn't have been doing it. He should have been doing it. If anything, you should have thanked me for saving your father and your mother's life. Then Mrs. Thetford asked me to come to the South Station, the South on Broadway, on Faulkner, the South Police Station, for a second interview. I came, and she said, Pastor Milton, you're not being arrested. We're not here. You haven't come here to be arrested. You can leave anytime. You don't have to do the interview. During the interview, you can leave at any time. You're going to be videoed. You're going to be recorded. You don't have to stay. You can leave. Now, I probably should have left then and got an attorney and then come back. That was a fault of mine, but I was innocent. I didn't mind during the interview. That interview was probably an hour, hour and a half. I stayed. I never got up. I never left. Approximately 1 month later, Detective Lydia Thetford my church member there at McDonald's, she's in charge. You come there 3 or 4 times to McDonald's on South Broadway, harassing her, trying to get her to turn against her pastor. Then you have her to call me, coerce her to call me, to come down to McDonald's. I come down to McDonald's. Think about it. You're telling your wife, goodbye, honey, I'll be back in a few minutes. And you go down to McDonald's and you are arrested at 1 o'clock p.m. on time, big time, prime time. You are arrested, publicly humiliated, disrespected, dishonored. I want to say a word right here. If you wanted to arrest me, why didn't you call me to come back to the South Police Station? Or give me the respect, since I'm not going to run. I've been here 40 years. Let me turn myself in. But you lured me, or had me lured, to come to a public place at prime time, on time, big time, and then put me in handcuffs and shoved me into the car. An hour later, thereabout, I'm there, in the booking area, and then I'm jumped on, and I'm beat up, my nose, my lip, my eye. They couldn't do anything for me in the medical unit there at the jail. I had to go to Mother Frances Hospital. Nobody should have to go through this that's innocent. I had durable power of attorney. I was legal. I did not do anything illegal. You can't call me a thief. You can't charge me for theft, when according to the law of this land, the law of this state, I had durable power of attorney. They asked me to do it. I didn't want to do it. But having compassion, I interceded to give my members some honorable dignity of life. What do I get for it? The son comes down and files charges against me. What do I get for it? I go and give an interview at the police station. What do I get for it? I'm arrested at McDonald's. What do I get for it? I'm beat up in the jail. And then for 7 months, nobody in my 40 years have I seen, no politician, no outstanding businessman, black or white, has been hammered the way that I've been hammered in every form of the media. How do you get a fair trial when you're tried every month? How do you get a fair trial and you're tried in the printed media, the radio media, the TV? And that's why I want to thank you again for Channel 19 for giving me the chance and the opportunity to tell my side of the story. Then my bail was $550,000 out of the 241st court. 2 weeks later, in the 114th court, for the same charge, another $250,000. 2 months later, December 22nd, a whole new case, but the same charge, different packaging with a different bow. Then I had turned myself in. The paper said, the news media said, he's arrested again. I was not arrested. I turned myself in when I found out. But look at, I'm trying to make ends meet like everybody else. $550,000 bail, $250,000, $100,000, arrested at McDonald's, beat up in the jail. This sounds like a setup and a frame-up. The police department of the city of Tyler are honorable men and women that do a rough, gruff, and tough job every day. And I'm proud of them. I was a police chaplain for over 10 years. There are honorable people in the district attorney's office and the sheriff's office. And I want to thank Larry Smith for his work in trying to, when I got beat up. I want to thank Commissioner Joanne Hampton and Gary Pinkerton for coming down to the jail and looking after me. And the black pastors, Dr. S.L. Curry and Robert L. Davis of the Texas Convention for helping me, and the Tyler Ministerial Alliance, and so many anonymous persons for assisting me and aiding me. But I just wanted to say that here in Tyler, I can say to the people, you know me. You know what I've done for hopeless and helpless and forgotten children. I adopted 11 children, Child Protective Services. People, they know me. I am the first Afro-American to receive the T.B. Butler Award for my community service. I've gone to the White House on the invitation of Louis Gohmert, where Mr. Boehner, Speaker of the House, introduced me. And I've done my best to bring peace. You can see there on the wall over here that that I've done my very best to bring peace to the city, peace with gangs, peace with understanding. And I've given my life to this city. There are days named after me, buildings and what have you, where people honored me for what I tried to do in the city of Tyler. And I don't know why this is happening to me, but I've tried to do my best to be honorable and respectable here in the city of Tyler.
So thank you for giving us a lot of detail. I tried to take as much notes as I could. I have a couple of questions just from things that you mentioned. The first is, do you say that you believe that this was, a setup, a frame up, but do you know who or why somebody would want to cause this much harm on your name and your reputation?
I ask that question every day. I don't know. But it appears to be a frame up and a setup. 40 years in Tyler Smith County doing honorable, respectable work. And then when you look at it, what other conclusion that sometimes can you draw? I don't know who would want to do that. I have no idea who would want to do that. But to be arrested at McDonald's when you could have turned yourself in, a $550,000 bail with all the other bails, almost $1 million, for something that I was doing legally and had the legal responsibility and legal documentation to do? What conclusions can the citizenry of Tyler Smith County draw?
And so this all happened, everything turns back to the Brown family, of course. You mentioned they were members for about 30 years?
Yes.
So when did you first meet the Browns, and can you talk about your relationship with them?
Yes, I can. When I first came to Tyler, they were members of another church, and I first met Wayford Brown, and I first met Marilyn Brown when I started, my work with the district conference, state and national conference, and we became very, 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 very good friends. And then they decided to unite with the Great New Pleasant Hill Church.
Yeah. So, it's a long relationship. Are they just a little bit more elderly, older than you, or are they about the same contemporary age?
No, Mr. Brown, I believe, was 83, 84 years old. Mrs. Brown, 79 years old, just a little bit, older. But we had a very, very close relationship over the years. People will tell what they say. Everywhere they go, they love their pastor. You know what I mean? And when Mrs. Brown first heard that I was arrested, she wanted somebody to take her down to the jail or the court, where she would tell him that my pastor is innocent and didn't do this. That's the kind of passion and love that they had for me.
Yeah, and so I don't know. It just, like you mentioned, the son was really nowhere to be around. You were really taking care of them. How did you become or develop such a close relationship with them? Did they become like a mother and father figure to you in a way, or how does that happen? I know that you're a pastor and you care for people, but how do you end up being such a big caretaker for these people? Well,
a pastor has a shepherd's heart. I will admit that sometimes my heart, I'll listen to my head a little bit more, and you wouldn't get into these kind of situations. But we had a pastor member. They were I was like a godson, to them. One of their daughter passed away, and I was very, very close with her daughter, who also was a member of my church, and always wanted me to take care of her parents, to look after her parents, and I kept that commitment that I made to their daughter.
Yeah.
So, Reverend Milton, answer this tomorrow, but specifically, different things they say. What all is it they're alleging that you did, and why you think there's no way you could have done that?
They are alleging, that I took, I went to, several ATMs and banks, and took their money and spent their money on, personal use. They mentioned, well, there's a car payment that I made. There is an auto payment, that I made, and I did that. But Mr. Brown said, if you need to do something, Reverend, you can do it. That was an agreement and understanding between us. It wasn't thousands and thousands and thousands, of dollars. I'm accused of stealing the car. I responded to the car situation. I'm accusing of stealing the house. My name is not on the deed. It never was on the deed. I never stole the house. And I mentioned, to you what the AAG situation. Mm-hmm. And I had durable power of attorney. It's always mentioned in every article, every that I read. You can't have it both ways. I can't be the thief that they call me, stealing the way they say I'm stealing, and then have the legal, durable, signed and notarized power of attorney at the same time. This is why I say frame up and set up.
Yeah.
Now, did you or the caretakers ever take a salary or anything like that?
I never took a salary, but the caretakers were paid, and I made sure they were paid.
Mm-hmm. And that was through their money, through you being the power of attorney. You made sure
that is correct.
Paid, but they're taking care of
the Browns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you consider that personal car payment that you made maybe a payment that they made for you?
Yes. Yes. That car payment, go ahead and pay it, Reverend Milton. Auto payment, go in, a few hundreds of dollars here, a few hundreds of dollars, there, for what I was doing. But I never, and I want to be clear on camera, never today, tomorrow, or ever stole or robbed anything from Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Mr. and Mrs. Brown were clear when the detectives came the first time. They were clear to their son. They were clear to everybody that their pastor, who they trusted and loved, who they entrusted to be their power of attorney for their business and their medical, that I never done anything wrong. They made it clear it was no wrongdoing. And even the detective said, well, nobody, they didn't file, Mr. and Mrs. Brown never filed charges. Nobody filed charges against me. It was the detective said, I think there's a crime here, so I'm going to get a warrant. It was her opinion. But remember, the Texas Department of Adult Protective Services for 7 months. So why didn't the detective talk to the Department of Protective Services, who investigated this for 7 months, found no wrongdoing? This, to me, appears to be a setup and a frame-up.
Thinking about religion, because we are here in the church and we can talk about the gospel and
yes.
Jesus and everything like that. When you're looking at the Bible, lots of his disciples were not the best people, and then they turned into a better person. They were people that were unlikely to have a life like worthy of being good friends with Jesus, right? And Jesus, as we know, was killed at the cross and accused of being something that he wasn't. Not saying that that's your case at all. Mm-hmm. But when you think about the circumstance that you've been placed in, can you tell us, and if you've thought about, like, is there a reason why this would happen? Is there a reason why you would be placed under this circumstance right now? Do you believe that this might be something that you could use in the future to continue sharing the gospel? I know you've already retired and started this church, but... Yes.
This is a satanic attack. We're just coming out of Easter. Our Lord and Savior who died for us. It's almost a badge of honor to be attacked this way. See, Satan wants to get the one that he thinks has the most impact on people, impact on people's future lives. And I believe that I've been attacked, that Satan is using people or this situation or circumstance, to come after me. I spent 21 days in the Smith County Jail. But while I was in there, I turned to jailhouse into the church house, leading young men to become preachers, leading young men to a saving knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Even some of the guards, even some of the workers talked to me, and I led them to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. On Sundays, the little room that we had, you couldn't hardly get standing room. Now, guys getting up 9 o'clock a.m. on Sunday morning that's incarcerated, you couldn't get a seat. And so the jailhouse turned in to the church house.
Reverend Milton, the bond setting numbers seemed to be incredibly high for the amount of what was going on there. How were you eventually able to bond out?
There were a lot of former students and parents and church members that put a lot of things together to assist me and aid me. It's a lot of money.
And then after you bonded out, did they come up with more charges again?
Yes, they did. They came up with it was a different case with the same charge, but when you look at it, it's the same package with a different bow. It's the same thing from 241 to 114, and then it's the same. It's more money, more charges, but when you look at it, they're all the same thing, all the same charges. I don't know why with all of my work in Tyler, all of my work with children, all of my work with people, all of my work with seniors, would people be coming after me this way? I've been a great friend with working with the district attorney or in the sheriff's office and the police office and what have you, getting people out of jail, not putting them into jail, and help solving cases through the years. So it has been stressful for my family, stressful for my church, stressful for my supporters. No one can come up with a reason why I'm being treated this way.
Yeah. So let's talk about this right here, right? So I'm just going to read this little excerpt from the actual indictment that Miss, what's her name here? I'm so sorry. I'm like trying to find her name so I don't get it wrong. So let me. Miss Thetford?
Yes.
Miss Kimberly Thetford.
Yes.
Is writing here. So she talks about how she began the investigation with Wayford and Marilyn Brown, and this process includes collecting bank statements and bank account information. You mentioned about you being the power of attorney and everything like that. So during the investigation, she learned that you had previously been the pastor at Greater New Pleasant Hill Baptist Church, and he was asked to leave around 2018 from the church due to his handling of finances and other suspicious behavior on his part. But you mentioned you retired. So where does this accusation come from?
I think it comes from Mrs. Thetford. Let me say this. God give us sense to have common sense. I served for 32 years at the Greater New Pleasant Hill Baptist Church. I left the church in better shape than it was before I came. I love them and they love me. That's a conclusion I think that she drawn. But if you go to the church, if you look at what the church looked like when I came, what it looks like now, how do you stay, if this is the kind of pastor you are, if this is the kind of person that you are, how do you stay 32 years?
Yeah. And so then we go on to say, while reviewing Texas Bank and Trust records for Milton, I noticed that he had deposited 2 checks into him and his wife's joint account numbered, and she gives the number, and they were written from an American State Bank account from the Pleasant Hill Missionary Baptist Church. So the first check was written to Jerome Milton for $3,000, and it was deposited on August 2nd, 2021. What was that for, if that's something that was written and deposited?
I can't.
And then the other one says it was written to Jerome Milton for $2,000, and it was deposited on August 5th, 2021. And both were signed by Martha Rowan. So, so these are just something that is on the actual, so I'm just kind of reading what some of the charges are. So if, to the best of your knowledge, if you can answer, do you know why they would have this $3,000 and $2,000 check that were in your name for your wife's account and your joint account, is what they're alleging here? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really comment on that. I can hear my attorney in my you know, I can't really comment on that, but no charges were filed.
Okay. And so, yeah, that's really the only questions I had from this one here, which is one of the warrants. So then they just go on to have a lot of other things, but everything is less than $30,000 from Texas Bank and Trust is what they're alleging. So these big bond charges are way excessive compared to what they're accusing you of, doing.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So how does that make you feel as a person that is still dealing through life? Yes, you're a leader, you're well known in the community, but you're still just like everybody else. You have ends to make and things to make. So how does that make you feel with these bond charges?
I feel very dishonored, very disrespected, because it was what they were accusing me of and what the bonds were. I did not commit murder. There are people that I've seen with, second and third time convictions have less bonds than what I had at $550,000 and $250,000 and $100,000. It's mind-boggling. Why would you have that kind of bond of a person that's never been in trouble? Clear record. My record is clear for what I tried to do in this community. I have no answer for that.
Yeah. So yeah, and then we just have the other ones for sure. So 3 different times that they filed different warrants of arrest per se for you.
Yes,
but
correct.
you say the last time you turned yourself in on
Yes.
December.
Yes.
Why turn yourself in? Why do that when you didn't do anything wrong?
Because when you have a warrant, when you have an indictment, it's followed by a warrant, and they're coming to arrest you. It isn't about whether you've done something wrong or right. It's that when the grand jury indicts you, then the district attorney's office is going to issue a warrant for you. So I didn't want to be arrested at home or arrested at the church. And so when I heard about the warrant, I turned myself in. Okay. But I was not, what really bothered me was for people to hear, and he's arrested again. I was not arrested, but I honorably and respectfully turned myself in.
So, you're out now. You paid your bonds, and you're expected back in court at some point. Do you have a court date set yet or anything like that?
Yes, there's a plea document hearing on May 13th, Friday. Okay. May 13th at 1:30 p.m.
So that's coming up.
And the 114th, Judge Jackson.
So if it's a plea document, are you planning on pleading in this, or are you going to go to trial? What's your plan?
I'm not sure, but this will probably end up in trial.
Yeah. And so the trial's going to be heavy. I'm sure you've got your attorneys with you, have your best interests in mind and everything like that. You've got your team you trust. As far as, I don't know, how have y'all been preparing for this? You have all of your documentation with you,
yes.
Right? You have all your receipts and everything that
yes.
they're kind of charging against you. So
yes.
you're just going to do your best and sit there. You planning on speaking, or are they letting you speak in court?
I don't know. This up to the attorneys.
Okay. Okay.
One other thing was one of your sons was also alleged to have been somehow involved. Can you talk about that situation?
Yes. My son, Jerome Anthony Milton, we didn't know about it until Saturday afternoon, that he fraudulently benefited from the money that I guess I was supposed to have stolen. Anthony's 26 years old, college graduate, University of Phoenix. Anthony doesn't even have a traffic ticket. But we have no idea exactly what did he benefit from. Did he go to Hawaii? Did he go to Peru? Did he buy a suit? Did he buy a car? Anthony has not received one dime. He would go to the ATM and get, I would tell him, get this amount of money, and that's all on camera. The detectives knew that. He would bring it to me, then Anthony would go about his business. But Anthony has never done anything to anybody. It hurt my heart. It just hurt my heart. How low can you get? What is this all about? To take a man's child who is innocent, who's trying to make his own life. I want the mothers and the fathers out there. This young man now has an indictment on his name, a third-degree felony, for something he don't know anything about, for something he didn't do, for whoever is trying to come after me or ruin my name. I don't know, but I'm asking God to intercede, to touch some people's hearts and touch some people's minds. I don't know what this is and why this is, but what I do know is my witness is in heaven, my record is on high. For 40 years I've helped the hopeless, the voiceless, and the forgotten. For 40 years I've helped churches. I've helped black pastors in this town have opportunity in the district conference, state, and the national conference they never would have gotten. Men and women I've helped. Kids I've helped. Go to college, out of jail, get jobs. And now at this hour, now at this time, I'm being accused of these things that I had the legal right and responsibility, to do. And I did the best job. I wasn't perfect, but I did the best job. And I may not see $1 million or have $1 million, but if I can make $1 million difference in somebody's life in Tyler and Smith County, and I tried, my living is not in vain.
Just a little bit of a background on the family. You said they had a reverse mortgage going.
Yes.
Is that part of the deal that the son says, well, if it's a reverse mortgage, he won't be able to inherit it, and because the money's been taken out of it?
No, the way the reverse mortgage works is that they give you 80% of the worth of the house, and so that you can have a comfortable life. And upon the passing away of Mr. Brown and then Miss Brown, then the AAG is paid back.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you said that one's a recorded call, so.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so that'll be part of probably the evidence too. There's something that I wrote in my notes down where I would like if you could clarify some dates of things that happened. So hold on me. Where is my papers? They're just all over the place here. Hold on. Maybe. Okay. I guess not. There it is. Okay. So when did you go to the police station at first to talk to them before all of the arrests, if you can remember?
I'm thinking late August. I'm not sure.
Okay. It had to be, right? Because that's when she started coming up and doing investigations and whatnot. So late August. So you decided to go after she showed up to the house twice.
No, she called me.
She called you, okay.
She called me and asked me to come to the South Station.
Okay. But this was before or after that?
After she'd been there 3 times.
Okay.
And she went to one of the caretaker's house several times. It was after all of that, she asked me for a second. The first interview is when she first came to the house. And I just happened to, to come there. And then she interviewed me at the house. The second interview is when she asked me to come to the police station, and I did.
Yeah.
She called me.
You said the Adult Protection Care Agency, I forget the
Yeah, the
word.
Texas, yeah.
They had been out there checking. Was that just a natural deal where they come in and check, or had they been alerted to something and then came out? How did that operate?
They were alerted I think they were called by members of the family, I believe. Somebody called that then they had some concerns. I think probably legitimate concerns. Was the house okay? And could Mr. Brown live there? They thought he needed to be in a nursing center. Ms. Brown needed to be in memory care. And so that's when Adult Protective Services, state of Texas, came in. And they called the hospital, they called home health care, they checked out everything I had told them, and it all checked out. And for 7 months, while we were taking care of it and things everything they asked me for, I provided it. But they kept everything under investigation or supervision for 7 months. They closed the case. That's the state of Texas.
Yeah. Let me think. There's a question that I have regarding, this whole thing. Like I said, we're looking at everything on the walls. We're looking at just your legacy here, Smith County, Tyler, Texas. You said you were born in San Diego?
Yes.
And then you had a pretty rough childhood for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. When were you adopted?
I was never adopted.
You were never adopted. You were talking about a woman who, took
Yes.
you into her care.
She was my foster mother.
She was your foster
And
mother.
that's the picture behind you. She was my foster mother
Okay.
because in those days foster parents could not adopt.
Oh, okay.
And she was my 14th foster mother.
Mm-hmm.
It was my 14th foster home. She had fostered 44 children, in which I was one of whom. And she led me to Christ and told me to not allow my abuse to be my excuse.
Yeah. And so you pretty much turned your life around after that. So
I did.
That's why you have that photo of her kind of as an image of, somebody that gave you hope, right?
Yes.
You definitely did that, I think, with all of the things in your name, but of course you're under this awful spotlight for you and your
Yes.
family. How has this affected you? How has this affected your church membership? How has this affected your life?
I thank God for the Open Door Church. They prayed for me. They stayed with me, and we're still together. But they were hurt because many of them were members of mine over at the Pleasant Hills Church. They decided just to come to this mission church, and they never forsake me. They've stood with me. My family is crushed. My children, they got to go to school, college, and work, and in the community, and people always, asking them and criticizing and ostracizing, and it's hurt them. My son, Isaiah, his dream was to go into law enforcement, to be a police officer, either with the Tyler Police Department or the Sheriff's Department. That as always was his dream, and I'm proud of Isaiah. It is his continued dream. I told him that there's always people that don't make good decisions, but that does not mean the whole Tyler Police Department is bad or the county Sheriff's Department is bad. Stay with your dream. Be a part of the policeman's team. Stay with your dream. Be a part of the sheriff's team, and stay with your dream and go into law enforcement.
I remember during the hearing, there was a question when your wife was there about where y'all were going to be able to live. Did you get thrown out of any place? Are you still able to? Is she still, living
Yes.
comfortably?
Yes, the Lord blessed. Many people came to our rescue, and we still have our house. It was tough.
Yeah.
It was difficult, but thank God for people that loved us and a loving church. We're still there.
Mm-hmm. As far as the Browns, your relationship, has it changed since all of this? And have you talked to them at all?
No, Mr. Brown passed away October 31st.
Mm-hmm.
By court order, I can't have communication with Mrs. Brown,
Mm-hmm.
but she's still living in the home.
Yeah. So October 31st. Well, that's unfortunate for him. But your relationship definitely changed. They were somebody that they trusted you with everything.
Yes, yes, they did.
Yeah. And you haven't heard from the son or anything at all?
I have not.
No. Yeah. That's tough.
Yes.
You trust people, people trust you, and then
Yes.
it's life, right?
It is.
Let me see. What else can you think of? Trying to think of anything else. You pretty much covered a lot of it. There's obviously a lot of investigation, I think, on our side that we also have to do. So we're trying to see if we can reach out and get both sides so we can have a fair article, and
Yes.
fair. So I just want to let you know that. But we really appreciate you talking to us because it really just goes to show, that you have a voice, you're a person, and you're accused of all of these things. I guess in trial, we'll figure out
Yes. And so
Yeah.
when will this air?
That's a good question. So I don't know when exactly. We're hoping maybe like soon, but we need to reach out to the other side so that we can have it all balanced. There's a couple things that I need to reach out on, which definitely I would like to have that interview from the police, and then maybe that recorded call and stuff like. There's just like a lot to it. There's definitely a lot to this case that we just have to get.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand that.
So I just want to be upfront with you and let you know.
Oh
that.
yes, I'm very happy that you're going to get the other side,
Mhm.
because you getting the other side, you'll find out very quickly that it corroborates. Why $500,000? Why being arrested at McDonald's when he just could have come down to the police station or turned himself in? Look what happened in December when I found out. I turned myself in. Could have done the same thing.
Yeah.
Why do you have to humiliate him and disrespect him
Yeah.
at McDonald's? Why harass, the church member? She came 4 times that day. Members all on camera, all on McDonald's camera. And she's working. You want to know, he stole the car. Where's the car? There it is right there. So why in the arrest warrant affidavit, you give this long speech about he didn't answer this, he didn't do this, but why didn't you ever say that the Texas Department of Adult Protective Services closed the case? Or why didn't you find out? Why didn't you say that Mr. and Mrs. Brown, upon 3 interviews that you came to their house, said that Pastor Milton is innocent? Why isn't that in the arrest warrant affidavit? That makes a big difference when you. So good. That's why I want you to investigate.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that made a big difference?
Yeah, for sure. I think so.
When the so-called victims tell you on 3, and they tell you never come back. They said, please don't come back to our house. It bothers us to see your badge and your gun and all the people in the neighborhood. That's embarrassing to us. And you come back 2 more times unannounced. Mr. Brown is bedridden. Miss Brown has, slight dementia. But you come back there harassing them to sign papers against their pastor, and even in that, they tell you 3 times, my pastor is innocent. So why am I arrested? I have the doable power of attorney legally, certified.
Has that been revoked since?
Oh yes, yes, oh yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How did that process work?
Well, basically, the son in October filed for guardianship.
October, right before his father passed away?
Right before his father passed away.
And that was October of 2021.
2021.
Mm-hmm.
He applied for guardianship, because the guardianship can trump power of attorney.
Okay.
And he was granted guardianship, which revoked the power of attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's fine, don't you?
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. Just a year too late. So if you wanted guardianship, then all you have to do was call me, Rev Milton. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for taking care of my mom and dad. But I know my dad does not want me to do this, that, and the other, but it's time for me and the family to step up and take accountability and responsibility for their care. And I would have done everything to help them do that. I'll talk to the Browns. I've done everything I could to help them have power of attorney or guardianship, whatever they desired. They never reached out whatsoever. Over almost a year. And barely came down to come see their parents. But Reverend Milton is the thief. He's taking everything from the parents. Well, if that's so bad, then you should have become the power of attorney and the guardian of your own parents.
Yeah.
None of this. We wouldn't be having this conversation today.